is that time of morning. Good morning. Welcome to everybody here. I see so many cool faces, cool names, so it's great to see and great to have you with us. So I'm gonna share my screen very carefully. Very slowly. Can you all see it? Awesome.
Yes.
All right. Welcome to Creative Mornings. If this is your first Creative Mornings, welcome. If this is your first time virtually in Charlottesville, welcome to Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm Corey Price. I'm the host of Creative Mornings, and there's a couple of folks on our team here that you've been engaging with and meeting with, and we are happy to have you. Per the usual, participation is encouraged. There's reaction buttons. You can clap on screen. I've been doing a lot of that on Zoom calls recently. And I'd also like to draw your attention to that we have closed captioning as an option now. So it's auto-generated. So don't, if something funky comes in there, I've warned you already, but it's pretty good. So wanted to let you know about that. All right, we like to start off with a group photo in the morning. So get your puppies, your coffee, your bad SpongeBobs, good SpongeBobs, Nemos. Maybe I'll pose with my Nemo. Maybe I will. And we will take a group photo. Cool coffee mugs, cool glasses. I'm seeing all the things. Alan has made his SpongeBob his background. So we are all set. All right, getting all my bad drawings. All right. And here we go. And a 1, a 2, a 3, cheese. And we'll take one more. All right, and a 1, and a 2, and a 3, cheese. And let me make sure I haven't missed anyone. I have not. Awesome. Thank you for participating in the group photo. All right, Creative Mornings is in 223 cities in 67 countries with 27,000 attendees per month. Thanks for being part of the 27K. With over 9,000 talks online and more than 10.9 million video views. So this is a large, expansive organization, and I am so glad that we are a part of it. This month is Ripple. And we also like to thank our global and local sponsors. So first, the global sponsors, the first being Basecamp and Hay. The Creative Mornings HQ team in Brooklyn recently launched a campaign called Hey Creative Mornings. You can think of it as their global virtual water cooler. So far, they've collected insights about Creative Mornings attendees' favorite books and have also tapped into their best tips about writing email signatures. Next is Mailchimp. Mailchimp's annual report highlights ways to help small businesses overcome uncertainty and find success. You can find these and more in their report called Marketing Strategies to help your small business grow. And lastly, Skillshare. And they're excited to share a limited time offer of 40% off an annual premium membership exclusively for the Creative Mornings community. It's valid for new members and only runs through March 31st. And we've got all those links in the chat. Thanks, Emma. And next, I'd like to thank our local partners who we couldn't do any of this without. First, Worth Higgins and Associates, Ting, The Fralin, Willow Tree, UVA Arts, The Bridge, and New City Arts. And we'll have a couple announcements. I'll kick the first one off from Worth Higgins and Associates. They're switching their Caliper magazine over to a free subscription basis. Subscribers will receive a printed issue delivered to their preferred address, have early access to Worth Higgins and Associates events, and will receive bonus content and entries into exciting giveaways and drawings. And they might also throw in some Willy Wonka-esque golden tickets here and there. So if you're interested, I'll put the link in the chat if you are interested in subscribing. All right. And next we have the Fralin. I think
I'll take the Fralin, Corey.
I'll take the Fralin. Great.
Yeah. The Fralin Museum is our local amazing art museum up at UVA. It is incredible. It has been closed during the pandemic and with some renovations that are happening, but they have created this amazing Fralin from Home initiative. And so these are the next 3 that are happening. You can check everything out from Virginia, UVA Fralin Art Museum, virginia.edu at Fralin-home. I hope to see you on the Zoom, some of you on the Zooms, and it's open to everyone. So please join us, even from the Carolinas.
Awesome. Thanks, Emma. And next, you've met Alan, but I'll reintroduce him. Alan from The Bridge.
Hey, everyone. Sorry, I had to come off mute. I just wanted to let you all know that we have an exhibition in our windows in our gallery at 209 Monticello on display right now. We're staying as COVID safe as possible, so we're just utilizing our big windows that we're lucky enough to have. The exhibition that is up right now is titled Miscegenation by Larissa Rogers. It runs through the month, and the exhibition will conclude with a performance piece titled My Body is the Architecture of My Every Ancestor, which is taking place March 26th, next Friday at 7 p.m. It runs about 20 to 30 minutes. If you're walking by or want to make a special trip to see some art in action, please wear a mask and respect the other folks that might be standing around watching, and say hi to me if you see me. That is all.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. All right, next we have our 30-second pitches, and we've got 2 today. First, I'll let you know what this is. So this is an opportunity for members in our Charlottesville chapter to pitch a side project, job posting notice, charity involved with, or your work for hire, or even an event. We have a space for up to 4 people to pitch. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. People to pitch at each event. If this is something of interest to you, be sure to sign up for next month. We have a link in our newsletter that comes out. So this morning we have pitches from Jess Davis and Sarah Sweet. So Jess, you are up first.
Friends, my name is Jess Walters. I am a disability rights activist, writer, and emerging mixed media artist in Charlottesville. I'm currently collaborating with VPM, Virginia's home for public media, to produce a new social media series called Spectrum of Expression. I use this platform to share ideas about the universality of gestural language and foster linguistic equity in our communities. I'll provide some links and I hope you check it out.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and next we have Sarah Sweet.
Hi, my name is Sarah Sweet. I just recently opened this business. It's called the Scrappy Elephant, and it's a creative reuse center out in Palmyra. So it's a place to donate unwanted arts and crafts materials and also shop for reclaimed arts and crafts materials at really low cost. It was going to be in Charlottesville, but COVID happened, so we are a little bit far out in Palmyra, but there are some fun things to do out in Fluvanna County. So hopefully you can come on by if you need some cool things, or if you want to get rid of some things, I'm the place to do it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And feel free to drop in a link or anything into the chat for folks to check you out. All right, we always like to read our manifesto, and I like to ask for a volunteer. So if you are interested in reading the manifesto and you have your video on, raise your hand, or you can use the raise hand feature and I will scan through the participants to see if we have a volunteer. All right, Adrian.
Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate with you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from others, in jazz hands, virtual claps, and virtual snaps. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in the neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome.
Thank you so much. All right. And now, what we've been waiting for, I will introduce our speaker for this morning. Erin Root is interested in the intersections between designing exterior and interior structures, drawing, painting, farming, and directing a small arts and environmental nonprofit called Scottsville Center for the Arts and the Natural Environment, or SCAN. Erin manages her own studio in architectural and landscape architectural design. She received a master's in both disciplines from the University of Virginia in 2013 and a bachelor in fine arts from the Cochran School of Art and Design in Washington, D.C. in 2002. Following graduation, she sat on the board of the Washington Sculptures Group and worked at the Red Dirt Studio while teaching middle and high school art practice, history, and theory at the Washington International School. In addition, she taught an inaugural course in parallel with the exhibition, The Uncertainty of Objects and Ideas, at the Hirshhorn Museum. After leaving DC, Erin completed a ceramics residency at the Cub Creek Foundation in Appomattox, Virginia. In graduate school, Erin found ways to overlap her love of making and designing and apply them to her interest in social justice and environmental advocacy. After graduation, she received a postdoctoral fellowship from the Center for Global Health at UVA, funded by the NIH, to continue her research in flexible water infrastructure that is adaptable to the landscape and the needs of the communities in the Limpopo region of South Africa. After returning from South Africa, Erin taught architecture and design thinking courses at the University of Virginia. Since moving to a small farm in Howardsville, Virginia, Erin has used rural living as a way to fold farming practices, landscape architecture, drawing, and painting together in her days. The ecotones between each of these excite her as she sees gradients to be this place where surprising unknowns happen that catalyze new thoughts, theories, and conversations among all disciplines. Please join me in welcoming Erin.
Thank you so much, Corey. I really appreciate that introduction. I'm trying to share, and let's see. It's saying who can share, only host, all participants. Should I just click on only host? Anyone?
You are a co-host. You should be able to. Let me see. I'm gonna just make you host. Oh, wait.
I think she just clicked the wrong button. She clicked the arrow next to share screen as opposed to share screen itself.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Well, again, thank you so much for that introduction. Let me bring this up. And can you all see that? Okay, great. All right. So let me just get organized here. So through art and design over the past 15 years, I'll talk about the thread of water and hydrology itself, the ripple effect in my own practice, and how it has impacted my creative process. As an artist, I thought I had to focus on one medium or even just one discipline. Now I find that restrictive, as each feeds the other. There are no disparate parts. Everything is an expansion and response to what came before. My way of understanding the world is to study it through the process of art and design. It starts with a question, and I use what I have in my toolbox to observe, experiment, analyze, and test. My undergraduate thesis was the beginning of my love of clay and understanding that my creative process was not singular. I needed the delicate, quiet movement of throwing buttery porcelain on the wheel to be balanced with the intensity of welding and bending steel. 4 years after teaching middle school and high school art, I decided to focus on my own work at a ceramics residency in rural Appomattox, Virginia, thinking that it was my path to continuing to be a ceramic artist. But instead, I was more struck by the culture of rural living and the painful honesty of the rural landscape. If left, animal carcasses can contribute to the larger ecosystem.
Erin, may I interrupt you? Your screen is black.
Oh, no.
Yeah, your share screen is black. I'm so sorry to just cut you off, but
No, I'm glad you did. Did you see any images?
we saw the first, yeah, we see images here. But we saw the very first one and then it went black.
Okay. So if I wonder, do you see it now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I wonder if it's because I'm taking it to full screen. Let me just test it. So if I go to full screen mode, can you see it now?
No.
Okay, that's unfortunate, but that's okay. I'll just leave it in.
If you wanted to go to full screen mode, I think what happened is when you shared your screen, you just shared the window instead of the full screen. So if you shared the full screen, then we'll see it.
Okay, great.
This also is working now.
Right, because it's not in full screen anymore. So let me try new share, or let me stop share.
And as I'm sure everyone is aware, it's not a Zoom meeting unless there's technical difficulties.
Right. I was about to say, like, technical difficulties. We're not afraid of them.
No, it's nice that it's flexible. So you're about to see a messy desktop, but that's okay. Okay, so let's try this.
You call that messy?
Oh, now we're cooking.
Can
you see it now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start. I assume you didn't see this slide. Is that correct?
Right. We didn't see that one.
Okay. So I'm going to just start again with this slide. So there's a connection between what I'm saying and the images. So my undergraduate thesis from the Corcoran was the beginning of my love of clay and understanding that my creative process was not singular. I needed the delicate, quiet movement of throwing buttery porcelain on the wheel to be balanced with the intensity of welding and bending steel. 4 years after teaching middle and high school art, I decided to focus on my work at a ceramics residency in rural Appomattox that Corey mentioned, Cub Creek Ceramics Residency, thinking that it was my path to continuing to be a ceramic artist. But instead, I was more struck by the culture of rural living and the painful honesty of the rural landscape. If left, animal carcasses can contribute to the larger ecosystem, hosting materials such as dead insects, fecal matter, and feathers from scavengers, increasing biodiversity, soil carbon, and nutrients. I'm assuming you all can see these now. I just want to check in. Great, okay. And there is a beauty in this decomposition, just as there is in the living. Through casting and drawing, I captured the moments before decomposition. It was here at the ceramics residency that I realized I wanted to apply my skills of making and visual literacy, not just to art, but to designing architecture that had a daily impact on humanity. Because of my understanding of the ceramic process, when studying for a master's of architecture, I was asked to be a part of a collaboration between the University of Virginia, University of Venda, or Univen, and the Mukindeni Pottery Cooperative in Limpopo, South Africa. The cooperative sits on a clay deposit that extends down the eastern edge of South Africa. And its potters have passed their craft from generation to generation. The cooperative is currently about 20 women from 20 to 90 years old. UVA and Univen have worked together with the intention of improving access to clean water in South Africa. This relationship has created the Water and Health in Limpopo, or WIL. WIL's 2009 water tests indicated that all the available water sources in Limpopo contain higher counts of E. coli bacteria than are considered safe by drinking water guidelines of the World Health Organization. Pure Mati, born out of these collaborations, has created a ceramic water filter that removes 99% of bacteria. Initiative Recover, also a UVA research project, is based on a fundamental philosophy that design processes and building methods are interdependent. A building is not considered a result or even a product of design, but instead is a solution well informed by thoughtful research, substantive exchanges, and direct community involvement. Recover was given the challenge of designing a space for the potters to create water filters in addition to their own craft. Through our collaboration, the design team learned that the kiln was not able to reach high enough temperature for the filters. We designed a planning strategy that included fast-growing hardwoods that also had medicinal use and boar fruit. The tiered roofs of the building responded to solar orientation and maximized passive lighting and cooling, in addition to collecting and storing rainfall from roof runoff that supports production and irrigation through the seasons. This work with Recover guided me to my master's thesis that explored the relationship between water quality, water quantity, and social and political power in the Limpopo region. Working from the premise that water quality and quantity are inextricably related, the research and design focused on collection and storage for human and agricultural use. Damming rivers and culverting water is a global epidemic, and by implementing large-scale fixed siteless water infrastructure, we interrupt our relationship to water and its role in the landscape. Okay, let me see if I can make this happen. All right. Are you seeing that, the destruction of the dam? Okay, great. An alternative strategy is needed, an infrastructure that takes into consideration seasonal rainfall, human and agricultural need, and existing ecological flows. Through an experimental painterly interpretation, this thesis animation considers alternatives to large-scale damming through the rainy and the dry seasons. Integral to this thesis is the role of representation in design and how representation further catalyzes design and ideas. The landscape is temporal, constantly changing with the seasons and human imprints. This thesis argues that we as designers need to push beyond still images into a representation that better depicts these temporal changes. The design proposal offers alternatives to large-scale damming by rescaling water infrastructure from centralized constructions to human scale networks, and from fixed locations to a more flexible, adaptable system. Moreover, this proposal employs existing skills of the local population in a community-based implementation strategy, resulting in more autonomous control of their water source. So the animation takes you through the rainy and dry seasons. From the household to agricultural fields to the river's edge, the design employs the traditional role of water as a signifier of public space. Women in Limpopo spend 1/3 of their lives collecting water. Both destination and path are public domains in constant flux that are integral to the proposed design. This is a kit of parts that is adaptable to the landscape and the needs of the community. At the scale of the river, the design proposes a more evenly distributed water source. The pools are sized for each community. This network of access replaces the singularly controlled dam. As I worked on these projects, I had a slight feeling of voyeurism, that this was not my land nor my culture. I wanted to better understand how designers had approached and reconciled this. Design can significantly impact human lives. Assuming architecture can have a positive impact on how people view and experience their world, it too can have a negative impact. If we as designers do not educate ourselves on the subtle and overt diversities of culture, we can do great damage. Through a Will postdoctoral fellowship, I studied contemporary examples of collaborative design build. By evaluating collaborative, participatory, and public interest design, which mean very similar things, through the lens of contemporary examples, how are these methods successful and where do they fail? How can elements of each approach contribute to a common framework for designing with communities? I visited and researched 6 case studies, 3 in South Africa, 2 in Rwanda, and 1 in Burkina Faso, that have used both contemporary methods and local craft in a collaboration between community and designers. After a year of research, I found the following themes in each project. Designers must be willing to learn from the community and thereby gain a real understanding of culture. The case study that best illustrates the importance of this is the Kayonza Women's Center in Rwanda. Designers took formal inspiration from royal homes. Because these women are not royalty, they don't think the space is for them and instead sit outside. Sharing skills by joining the hand-built vernacular with the contemporary design creates space for innovation. In education and training, drawing as a static visual object is not a universal language. Drawing as an active descriptor is a universal language. Doing work outside of our communities requires a reframing of thought and a restructuring of practice. We are not helping our clients, but instead we are working as true collaborators and design with them instead of for them. To design requires a framework. To design successfully with others requires that framework be flexible. To authentically collaborate with communities and the environment, one has to have a love of the unknown, the unpredictable, and sometimes the chaotic. One has to be invested in the outcomes of all participants and understand that the result will have its own personality, distinct from your independent work. The Pottery Cooperative graduate thesis and postdoctoral fellowship informed how I approach community involvement, hydrological management, and the relationship design can have to these efforts. I've taken these lessons with me to Scottsville, where I now practice architecture and landscape architecture and continue my art practice, and have become the director of the Scottsville Center for the Arts and the Natural Environment, or SCAN. Since 2005, SCAN has worked to celebrate, develop, and deepen our community's knowledge of the arts while discerning its collaborative potential with our ecological landscape. Scottsville is 19 miles south of Charlottesville on the bend of the James River. The population is 594 people, but is a prominent intersection of Albemarle, Fluvanna, and Buckingham counties. We call ourselves a river town, but our relationship to the river is contentious. Since 1870, Scottsville experienced 21 floods of 20 feet or more above mean low water level. Consequently, a dam was built on Mink Creek in 1975, and the levee was dedicated in 1990. Scottsville has not flooded since that date. Because of Scottsville's visual separation from the river caused by the levee, SCAN sees the value in creating a stronger relationship to our landscape to heighten the awareness of our adjacency to the river and therefore our responsibilities as a river town. I don't know, the picture distorts it a little bit, but this is Scottsville, this is the levee, which is quite high, and then this is the river. So if you're standing on the other side of the levee from Main Street, or our Main Street, which is Valley Street, you see the bridge go up, but you don't see the river. And if you're standing on the other side of the levee where the town is, you don't see the river. So there's a visual disconnect. Within the storefront of our rivers, our landscapes, our community in Scottsville, where I am right now, is the exhibition space for SCAN, the James River Association's Middle Watershed Office, and my design studio. The intent of the exhibitions is to display visually articulated environmental research and analysis to the Piedmont region and beyond. The first exhibition, Mineral Medium, examined the displacement and transformation of iron oxide, the principal contaminant found in the outflow of acidic water from coal mines, through prints with found materials layered with delicate drawings. The current exhibition, which you can see behind me, displays Grow Oystery's scalable concrete substrate product, poised to dramatically improve oyster and other reef restoration efforts in the Chesapeake Bay watershed and beyond. SCAN believes in the value of putting art and design in the public realm, outside of an exhibition space. Public works bring our streetscapes and town buildings to life and encourages conversations about art, design, and the environment. SCAN worked with the UVA School of Architecture to put student work in vacant storefronts in 2016. Unfortunately, because of COVID, our small community businesses have struggled, and we have even more empty storefronts. This does, however, create an opportunity to exhibit art and design for the public to see. SCAN in the town of Scottsville will be continuing this initiative through our grant. If you're an artist or designer, or you know of an artist or designer who's interested in exhibiting your work in a storefront, please contact SCAN at getcurious@svilleartsandnature.org. Paint Out Pollution is a project that increases public awareness of stormwater pollution and celebrates the native plant and animal species that call the river home. Virginia artists have created artwork of native plant and animal species that were converted to stencils for the public to use. The Van Cleef Nature Area is a 63-acre park owned by the town of Scottsville that the public can access. Despite its size, the entrance to Van Cleef was not apparent. SCAN worked with artist Emily Gable to create a mural to delineate the otherwise hidden entrance to the park, while also depicting Mink Creek's relationship as a tributary to the James River. This was also a partnership with the Charlottesville Mural Project, so I just want to put a shout out there. And an extension of that funding supported this mural by Tilly Muller. Scottsville is the first official bee city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, joining a larger bee city campus in the US to galvanize communities to sustain pollinators by increasing native plants, providing nest sites, and reducing the use of pesticides. As another collaboration, Tilly Muller from the Discovery School and SCAN worked together to create a mural telling the story of Tilly and her grandfather beekeeping. The ripple effects between SCAN and the town are apparent in these relationships and in the town's policies. The town has increased their budget in arts and environmental community programs and updated their comprehensive plan to include environmental initiatives to protect important resources, including soils, riparian zones, and native mature vegetation. For the last few years, I've been working with Albemarle Countertop Company, a stone fabrication shop in Charlottesville, Virginia, to design a new addition and landscape. The program of their space presented a perfect opportunity to integrate their medium into the facade and the landscape. We use neolith, a compressed ceramic tile, and soapstone for the skin of the building, and Brazilian granite on the ground. The soapstone facade, mined right here in Schuyler, Virginia, not far from Scottsville, was grooved in ACC's fabrication shop by the CNC router. The slabs are installed currently, but the sculpting of the walls won't be complete until all plants are in. So the chips of stone will add to the ground layering. I now live on a small farm in southern Albemarle. Part of my love for rural living is how it exposes truths. When we don't enforce, oh, I forgot the text for this slide. Let me rewind. I think the more we overlap our passions, the more we innovate and find relationships that were not otherwise framed or celebrated. This is the crux of creativity to me. So with my family, I live on a small farm in Albemarle County. Part of my love of rural living is how it exposes truths. We don't enforce control. When we don't enforce control, an awesome chaos happens. When streams are not culverted, we can see how fast they turn to rivers, how fast fields turn to swamps, and how fast forests turn into a network of streams. Once my family and I found out the land uphill from our home was being logged, we purchased it. As a result, we gained access to a power line that we have been managing with goats as opposed to clearing our pesticides. There is a constant beauty and surprise in what inhabits disturbed land and the joy and environmental benefits that come with managing goat and chickens. But there is also a lot of poop, constant chaos, great devastation, and death. Again, through graphite, and now in caustic work, I'm working to find value in that chaos. And simultaneous to designing buildings where precision is essential, on this rural land, there is an unseeable, unmeasurable element. I've been so focused on the requirements of being a professional designer that I've neglected the space between, or dare I say, the spiritual. What trees say through their networks of roots, and where our beloved goats go when they die. What is between the soggy Virginia clay and the temporal creeks and the clouds of blooming redbuds? What is in that space? There are so many unknowns, and my approach to this is no longer to strive for the precise answer and put it in a box, but instead let it float and see where it lands. And that's the conclusion.
There's a lot of applause going on and some wonderful comments in the chat. Thank you so much for making all of those connections for us this morning in terms of the sort of I think someone mentioned how many circles there were in your talk, and also how those circles are all connected to each other, no matter geographical location, the type of community you're working with, or even the medium that you're working with. So I think it's been really neat to see the ripple effect in action in your work, and also to just make that connection that it can affect anything, regardless of borders. So thank you so much. There's already a couple questions for you, so I'm gonna scroll and find them. The first one came from Ben Fry. So in regards to the Limpopo community in South Africa, how do these communities come to start working with you, and what's the discovery process like?
Can Ben explain what he means by discovery process?
Ben, if you want to unmute.
Yeah. I was just mostly like, how do you all get connected and then find out what their needs are specifically?
Yeah, good question. So I think that relationship started with UVA in the early 2000s with the engineering department and the Center for Global Health. And then the architecture school was folded in through Initiative Recover. So it's a lot of, it's a ripple effect of a lot of initiatives sort of joining forces and building on each other. The first few sort of projects were, for lack of a better word, not very successful, or dare I say failures in some capacity, because, you know, white people of a specific culture, of a specific economic status are going into a community that can't even get clean water to drink. So there is a lot of kind of misinformed or misinformation from us as Americans going into a community like that. However, because UVA had been there for a significant amount of time and created relationships throughout the year, the communities began to, I think, trust more. I think trust is a really large part of that work. Of when you go into a community, you listen and observe more than you talk and tell people what to do. And I think because that is what creates the trust. So I don't know the initial first step, but I suspect it had to do with the engineering department and the Center for Global Health understanding that the water quality of all of the surface water, of the water spigots, and of the municipal taps all were contaminated, making people very sick. And so that was the trigger. And so then it created these, you know, at this point, a couple of decades long of relationships.
All right, thank you so much. I'm scanning for there's been so many wonderful comments that I have to like scroll back up and go find the other questions. Okay, so this one's from Brooke Ray. Erin, to paraphrase something you said, collaboration requires a framework. Successful collaboration requires the framework to be flexible. It's an important observation, and she's wondering if you can speak to this a bit more with this idea as it's related to your collaborations.
Sure. Yeah. And I think I'll just say, to start off with it, I'm still trying to figure it out. SCAN is one of the projects that didn't fit within the 20 minutes, was that SCAN is has a 13-acre property that was donated to us, and we are using the participatory design process to create a public space for people to inhabit on that property. And that's just starting. So if you're interested in being a part of that, we'd love to hear from you. And you can use the same email address, getcurious@swlartsandnature.org. So going back to the question. Architects and landscape architects have a very specific framework and timeline that they or we use in order to design for clients. And that sort of starts with the very broad and then hones into the very specific, down to, you know, design details, like how is a joint connected. So we might start with, you know, schematic drawing, or really diagrams about a site. Where's the water flowing? You know, what's the solar orientation? Go into schematic drawings, which can be very, depending on your aesthetic and the skill set you have, can be very vague and loose, which I'm sure you can assume that mine is very vague and loose for the sake of leaving spaces open to have a dialogue with the client. And then from there, going more into design, development, and construction documents. So from the very broad to the very specific. What I found in the case studies, and then in the work that I was doing, both with my thesis, with Recover, and now truthfully with Scottsville, is that the community needs to be a part of the design process from the onset, from the very beginning, because there's a tendency for designers to design and then ask the community what they think. And that doesn't help anyone, because the designers have wasted a lot of time, and you don't necessarily as a designer get the ideas that the community brings in, which I think, and I hope I translated this through the talk, that there is so much creativity and innovation that can come from working with people, working with communities, working with the environment, and listening, and observing, because, you know, we might have a very specific aesthetic and a very specific way of designing, but once you bring in all of these different personalities and different opinions and different objectives, you really can create something other than what you may be able to predict as a singular designer. So I find a lot of joy and excitement in that process of you know, of hearing what people have to say about what they want. And to quote my mom, who's on here, she told me years ago, she said, drawing and you know, photography and etc. Are all about seeing. It's not necessarily about the skill itself, but it's about the observation. And I think that is a running theme throughout all of my work, that it's important to sit back and observe and just see and listen. And I know I've repeated that several times, but I think that can be done both, you know, in the physical, like how we interact with other humans, but also it can be done with our own skills, you know. So for me, it's drawing and sculpting and, you know, creating diagrams. For others, it may be something else. So I think that flexibility is about shifting that already created framework and timeline and making it, you know, making some of those processes longer. Sometimes schematic I often feel like schematic doesn't have enough time. Whereas when you work with communities, you can really expand that time and that space. So I think it's important to build that into the process.
I love what your mom said. It's about observation. I think that's where creativity comes from, is observation. What are you seeing, and then applying the tools that you've learned, whether it's how to use your camera, how to draw lines that make it look like something, you know, that people will recognize, or maybe play with what they recognize. And I think that's a beautiful connection. I keep talking about connections with you, but a beautiful connection to being flexible with that design and that design timeline. There's always all that pressure, but it's important to remember, who are you designing for? So I thank you so much for that.
Can I just build on to?
Yeah.
Is that okay? In sort of inherent in the talk is this this understanding that, like, I very much feel that in our culture, being sort of American culture, there's a want to focus on one discipline or one topic or one, one thing. And I see the value in that, because it means you can become really exceptional at that one discipline. And I also see the value in understanding that those disciplines, their thought processes and their tools, but that really we can learn. I believe we can, just like everyone is creative, I think we can all learn most tools. And so it's about, to me, it's about having a mission that is satisfied with a variety of tools, as opposed to only being able to satisfy one part of a mission with one very specific discipline or tool.
Thank you so much for adding on to that, because I think that is important to start thinking about too, of how do you become flexible? It's about having variety. I'm going to ask one more question. I know we're running late, but I thought it was important to ask. So another one from Brooke. The idea of integration is compelling and a theme that's been personally servicing for them right now. Do you have active practices that you use to generate the kind of self-awareness needed to see that you were neglecting the space between and the spiritual? So I thought that would be a great note to end on.
That's a really good question. I ended there because that's where I am really today in this moment. Like I said, there was always, I came from an art background. I went into architecture. There was always a sort of push from my discipline to become more precise. And so, and I, again, see the value in that precision when you're building a building. But when you're generating ideas, I think if you jump into precision, you lose so much of what is within, the spaces between. So a couple of things have happened in the, I guess, past few months that have kind of triggered that. One is my husband built me this beautiful studio in the middle of the woods. So now I have a space to work unlike I've ever had before. So, I can spread out, I can leave it a mess. I can explore, I can experiment. The other thing that happened is, so we have these goats and we've had them for 6 years now, and we've sort of built our little herd. And one of our dearest goats passed away after, many sicknesses throughout the summer. And so I started thinking about, we live on this land that sits really low. It's called Spring Valley Farm. And probably at this point, the water table rises. So like literally the fields become swamps. You feel like the lake is coming up from below. And there's the house itself is from the 1830s, so it has a lot of history. And then there's, you know, this chaos of the and destruction of the logging. And so there are all these things happening. And when I first moved there, I had this urge to just like stop and listen and look, and, you know, of course, listen and look and observe. But after our dear goat died, it triggered a kind of a grief and a wanting to understand, like, where, you know, other than the decomposition process and the beauty that I saw in that, where do those spirits go? Where do those, what happens in, what am I walking through when I walk through the fields? You know, what, there's got to be something within that space, right? And so, and you almost like feel it in the oppressive humidity of Virginia, that there is something within that space. But I think, you know, as far as my practices, really it's about like thinking about the structure. So if you take an understanding of the structure of architecture and the framework of architecture and apply that to, say, you know, dense woods, and think about trees as columns, and then all of that that's happening between. I think I'm always thinking about how, you know, in that encaustic drawing, I'm creating these lines that are trying to reference a structure both horizontally and vertically. And so trying to reference that space and that movement that one cannot see. And so I'm always trying to think, and I'm always having to remind myself to think about that in between, because it's not a part of our, you know, our articulation on a daily basis, or at least it's not a part of mine. And I think maybe the practices are being outside and just, you know, sitting and listening, and looking at the physical visual, and then applying that to the spiritual, and see where those overlaps are. I still don't really know, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out how to represent that.
Right. I think it's a beautiful start where you are now, and you've definitely given me some things to consider. What are you walking through, and what's been there? Our speaker last week, Elgin, got us to think in that similar way. So it's great to see that connection there again. But I just wanted to thank you so much for your time this morning. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, getting us all thinking about new things. What can we do differently in our creative practices, and how can we see things differently? So thank you for talking to us about the ripple effect. It's been a joy to listen to you this morning. And if you've got time, you should stick around and read all the wonderful things in the chat. Everybody's really appreciated you this morning.
Great.
So,
wow.
Yeah, thank you so much. Lots of silent virtual applause happening right now.
Thanks for being here.
And when everything's open, we'll have to take a trip down to Scottsville and say hello and come see Scan. It'll be great, and the murals as well. So thank you to everybody who came this morning. Thanks for bringing your energy, your lovely faces, and your lovely names with no face. See you all later. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, because it's Friday. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Corey.
Thanks so much.
Wow.